What if Christopher Nolan's most ambitious movie ends up creating a bigger battle off the screen than the one unfolding on it? For years, Nolan has built a reputation unlike almost anyone else in Hollywood. His name alone can turn an ordinary release into a global event, and audiences have come to expect a very specific experience whenever he steps behind the camera. Real locations, practical filmmaking, giant concepts grounded in believable emotions and stories that demand attention. That is exactly why the announcement of the Odyssey immediately caught people's attention. Here was a filmmaker famous for realism taking on one of the oldest and most legendary myths ever told. At first, many fans were simply curious. How would Nolan approach gods, monsters, prophecies, and epic journeys? Would he transform the mythology into something more grounded? Would he preserve the fantasy elements? Those questions created excitement, but what nobody expected was the storm that would follow. Because as more information about the project started appearing online, the conversation shifted away from visual spectacle and towards something far more controversial. Suddenly, people were no longer debating the story itself. They were debating the casting, the cultural representation, and the larger message behind the production. And that is where this developing story takes a dramatic turn. The moment major casting announcements began circulating, social media exploded with reactions. At first, it looked like the usual internet discussion that accompanies any massive blockbuster. Some people loved the choices, others questioned them, and many simply waited for more information. But as specific roles became the center of attention, the debate intensified. The casting connected to Helen of Troy and her twin sister quickly became one of the biggest talking points surrounding the movie. Fans of Greek mythology started asking whether the production was staying faithful to the cultural roots of the story. Critics of the casting argued that a tale so deeply tied to ancient Greece should reflect that heritage more directly. Supporters responded by saying that acting should be about performance and interpretation rather than nationality. Before long, the discussion spread beyond movie communities and entered mainstream cultural conversations. Every new promotional image seemed to generate another wave of arguments. Every interview clip became evidence for one side or the other. What began as a casting discussion gradually evolved into a wider debate about identity, authenticity, and the responsibilities of modern filmmaking. And once that happened, there was no chance of keeping the conversation contained. Then came the reaction to promotional material, and this is where things became impossible to ignore. Online engagement numbers surged, but not entirely in the way a studio would hope. Across multiple platforms, criticism began piling up beneath trailers, teaser clips, and official announcements. Some viewers praised the scale and ambition of the project, while others focused almost entirely on the casting controversy. Reports and discussions across the internet started highlighting unusually intense negative reactions compared with many recent blockbuster releases. Whether those reactions accurately represented the broader audience became a subject of debate in itself, but one thing was undeniable. The conversation surrounding the Odyssey was no longer centered on anticipation alone. It had become a cultural flashpoint. Every side claimed to be defending something important. One group argued that mythology belongs to everyone and should be interpreted freely. Another argued that stories rooted in specific civilizations should not lose their cultural identity in the process. As those arguments collided, the movie became bigger than a movie. It transformed into a symbol within a much larger conflict taking place across entertainment, media, and online communities. And the closer the release moves, the more intense that conflict appears to become. What makes this situation especially fascinating is that the criticism is not coming from only one corner of the internet. The discussion has reached international audiences, and nowhere has the reaction attracted more attention than in Greece itself. Many people there view stories like the Odyssey not simply as entertainment, but as part of a living cultural inheritance stretching back thousands of years. That perspective has fueled emotional responses from commentators, historians, and ordinary viewers who feel a strong connection to the source material. According to the critics, this is not merely a question of creative freedom. They see it as a question of cultural recognition. If Hollywood frequently emphasizes representation and authenticity, they ask, why should those principles disappear when dealing with Greek stories? That argument has resonated with many people who believe consistency matters. Others push back by noting that major historical and mythological films have always featured international casts. They argue that cinema has long transcended national boundaries. Yet the fact that this debate continues growing shows that neither side is willing to back down. Instead of fading away, the controversy keeps finding new energy with every fresh update. Another detail that has added fuel to the fire involves comments made during interviews. Several stars connected to the project have spoken about discovering the story through the screenplay and beginning their preparation after joining the production. On the surface, that sounds completely normal. Actors often encounter new material while researching a role. Yet some critics seized upon those comments as evidence that the filmmakers were disconnected from the cultural significance of the source. They argued that the Odyssey is one of the most famous stories ever written and should already be familiar to performers participating in such a monumental adaptation. Supporters dismissed that criticism immediately, pointing out that knowledge of a story does not automatically determine the quality of a performance. Still, in an environment already filled with suspicion and frustration, even small remarks can become major headlines. That is exactly what happened here. Every quote was analyzed, reposted, and debated across countless platforms. The movie seemed trapped inside a cycle where every new piece of information generated another round of controversy. Instead of calming tensions, interviews often intensified them. And because the project carries Christopher Nolan's name, every statement receives far more attention than it otherwise might. At the center of all this stands Nolan himself, and that may be the most intriguing aspect of the entire story. This is a director who has spent decades earning trust from audiences. Even people who disagree with certain creative choices often acknowledge the care he brings to his work. His films are known for meticulous research, practical craftsmanship, and an obsession with immersion. That reputation is one reason many observers remain cautious about judging the Odyssey too early. They argue that Nolan deserves the benefit of the doubt because he has repeatedly delivered experiences that exceeded expectations. At the same time, others believe that reputation should not shield any filmmaker from criticism. They insist that audiences have every right to question decisions before release, especially when those decisions involve beloved cultural material. The result is a strange situation where Nolan's credibility simultaneously protects the project and intensifies scrutiny surrounding it. People expect greatness from him. That expectation raises the stakes dramatically. If the film succeeds, supporters will point to his vision as proof that the backlash was overblown. If it fails, critics will claim the warning signs were visible from the beginning. Meanwhile, major entertainment outlets have largely responded by defending the production and criticizing the online outrage. Their position is straightforward. They argue that judging a film before watching it is unfair and that trailers reveal only a fraction of the final experience. Many commentators within mainstream media believe audiences are drawing conclusions based on limited information. They warn that internet culture increasingly encourages snap judgments and emotional reactions. Yet that response has created another layer of conflict. People who already feel ignored by large media organizations interpret those articles as dismissive and condescending. Instead of reducing tensions, the coverage sometimes reinforces the belief that legitimate concerns are being brushed aside. This pattern has become familiar in modern entertainment debates. Fans raise objections. Media outlets criticize the reaction. Audiences respond by becoming even more entrenched. Before long, the discussion shifts away from the original issue and toward questions of trust, influence, and credibility. That appears to be happening again here. The movie itself remains unreleased, yet the battle over how people are allowed to discuss it has become almost as significant as the film. There is also a broader industry context that cannot be ignored. Hollywood has spent years promoting diversity, inclusion, and representation as central values. Supporters see that effort as long overdue and necessary. Critics argue that the implementation often appears inconsistent. The Odyssey controversy has become a new example used by both sides. Those questioning the casting ask why a story rooted in Greek culture does not prominently feature Greek performers. They believe that if authenticity is important in some situations, it should be important in all situations. Defenders respond that acting is inherently transformative and that restricting roles according to national identity would undermine artistic freedom. This disagreement extends far beyond one movie. It reflects a larger struggle over how modern entertainment should balance representation, creativity, and commercial priorities. That is why emotions remain so intense. People are not merely discussing a casting decision. They are debating principles. They are debating values. They are debating the future direction of the industry itself. In many ways, the Odyssey has become the latest battlefield in an argument that has been unfolding for years and shows no sign of ending anytime soon. Yet despite all the noise, there is one crucial reality that keeps emerging whenever analysts discuss the project. Christopher Nolan has an extraordinary track record at the box office. Time and again, predictions of disaster have collided with the reality of audience demand. Even during challenging periods for theatrical exhibition, his films demonstrated remarkable drawing power. People show up because they trust the experience associated with his name. That trust is incredibly valuable. It means online controversy does not automatically translate into commercial failure. History is filled with examples of movies generating enormous backlash before release, and then performing extremely well once tickets became available. The same possibility exists here. Early reports surrounding ticket demand have already fueled speculation that interest remains extremely strong. For many moviegoers, the controversy is secondary. They simply want to witness Nolan's interpretation of an epic story on the largest screen possible. Whether they agree or disagree with the casting choices, curiosity remains a powerful force, and curiosity is often one of the strongest drivers of box office success. The more people argue about a movie, the more others become interested in seeing it for themselves. The financial side of the story adds another fascinating dimension. This is reportedly one of the most expensive productions of Nolan's career, with a budget that places enormous pressure on the final result. Large-scale filmmaking always carries risk, but that risk becomes even greater when expectations reach extraordinary levels. A project of this magnitude cannot rely solely on hardcore fans. It must attract global audiences across multiple demographics and regions. The good news for the studio is that mythological epics possess broad international appeal. The challenge is ensuring that controversy does not overshadow the actual storytelling. If audiences leave theaters impressed, many of the current arguments could fade surprisingly quickly. Success has a way of rewriting narratives. On the other hand, if the movie disappoints creatively, critics will revisit every controversy and present it as evidence of deeper problems. That is why the stakes feel so high. The debate today concerns casting and culture, but the verdict that truly matters will arrive when audiences finally experience the finished film. Until then, every prediction remains speculative, every confident declaration remains uncertain, and every argument remains incomplete. What I find most interesting is how this entire situation reveals the changing relationship between audiences and major studios. Years ago, most people would have waited until release before forming strong opinions. Today, every production exists under constant public examination from the moment it is announced. Casting decisions, costume designs, interview comments, leaked photographs, and promotional campaigns are all scrutinized in real time. Supporters and critics build competing narratives long before the movie reaches theaters. Sometimes those narratives prove accurate. Sometimes they collapse completely once audiences see the final product. The Odyssey now sits directly in the middle of that phenomenon. It is being judged, defended, celebrated, and criticized simultaneously. Different groups are effectively watching different versions of the same movie in their minds. One side sees a visionary filmmaker creating an ambitious adaptation. Another sees a production disconnected from the culture that inspired it. Neither side possesses the complete picture yet. That uncertainty is what makes the story so compelling. We are witnessing not only a movie release, but also a case study in how modern entertainment controversies evolve and expand. As release day approaches, the biggest unanswered question remains surprisingly simple. Is the movie actually good? For all the arguments about representation, authenticity, media coverage, and cultural identity, the final audience response will depend heavily on quality. Great filmmaking has a unique ability to overcome skepticism. A powerful story can change minds. Memorable performances can silence doubts. Spectacular execution can redirect conversations that once seemed impossible to escape. Nolan's supporters believe that is exactly what will happen. They expect the finished film to justify the creative choices and remind people why he remains one of the most respected directors working today. Critics remain unconvinced. They argue that strong craftsmanship cannot automatically erase concerns about cultural representation. Both positions will continue colliding until viewers finally see the result. That is why the coming months feel so important. The debate has reached a point where only the film itself can provide a meaningful answer. Everything else is speculation, anticipation, frustration, optimism, and argument. The real test still lies ahead, waiting in a dark theater where audiences will ultimately decide what this movie becomes. Right now, The Odyssey feels less like a film and more like a cultural event unfolding in real time. Every update creates another headline. Every headline sparks another debate. And every debate pulls more attention toward the project. Whether you see the backlash as justified criticism or exaggerated outrage, one thing is impossible to deny. People care. They care enough to argue, defend, analyze, and speculate months before release. In today's crowded entertainment landscape, that level of engagement is rare. The controversy may continue growing. The narrative may shift again. New information may completely change the conversation. But for now, all eyes remain fixed on Christopher Nolan and his ambitious journey into one of history's most famous legends. The question is no longer whether people are paying attention. The question is what happens when the curtain finally rises and audiences see the complete vision for themselves. That moment will determine whether this becomes a triumphant adaptation, a divisive experiment, or simply the biggest pop culture spectacle of the year. Until then, I want to hear your thoughts. Let me know what you think. And if you enjoyed this update, like, share, and subscribe.